When I first saw the message pop up on my old, dusty phone, I did not believe it was meant for me. I had been sitting alone in my small living room, listening to the quiet hum of the ceiling fan and the distant sound of evening traffic outside my window. I often kept my phone nearby, though hardly anyone called me anymore. Most days it was only silent, a kind of silence that becomes a companion over the years, a silence you learn to live with because there is nobody left to break it for you. That evening, however, everything changed with one single sentence, a sentence I had waited my whole life to hear, even though I never said it out loud. The message said, "Hello, I think you might be my grandmother. Is your name Shahnaz?" My heart stopped. I read it again and again, thinking my eyes were tricking me. It felt unreal, like someone had touched a part of me I had buried long ago. My hands started to tremble. I held the phone tighter against my chest as if it could steady my heartbeat. You must understand, I had lived the last 20 years believing that chapter of my life was closed forever. I used to imagine my granddaughter growing up somewhere far away, surrounded by people I would never meet, living a life I would never be part of. I thought she might not even remember that I existed. Or worse, that she had been told a version of me that was nothing like the truth. So to see her name, a name I knew in my bones, appear on my screen, it felt like someone had opened a window in a room that had been locked for decades. I whispered to myself, "Is this real?" I even looked around the room as if someone might step out of the shadows and confirm it for me. But it was only me and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. For a long moment I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how to. What do you say to a granddaughter who grew up without you? What words can fill 20 years of absence? How do you explain silence that was never your choice? My mind went back to the day everything changed, the day I last saw my son, the day my granddaughter was taken far away, and the day my life split into a before and an after. But before I tell you about that moment, I want you to understand who I was back then, who we were as a family, how love existed between us, soft, imperfect, but real, and how a few decisions, a few misunderstandings, and a few painful silences can take a family that once stood together and slowly break it apart piece by piece. That message, that one unexpected message, made all those memories return to me like a slow, painful movie. It reminded me of the nights I stayed awake wondering where she was. It reminded me of the dreams I had where she would run to me and call me Nani again. It reminded me of the mistakes I made, the things I said, and the things I never said. As I held the phone, I could almost hear her voice in my head, a voice I had never heard as an adult. I imagined how she might look now. Grown, confident, maybe carrying questions she had kept inside for too long. I closed my eyes and whispered, "She found me." The kind of whisper that comes from deep inside your chest. A whisper filled with relief, fear, hope, and the kind of love that never truly dies no matter how many years pass. That moment, the moment I realized my granddaughter had been searching for me, was the moment my silent world finally breathed again. But to understand why her message meant everything to me, let me take you back to the beginning, to the days when my family was whole, when laughter filled our home, and when I still believed I would watch her grow up right in front of me, because the truth is, I was not lost. I was waiting, and I didn't know she was searching for me too. I want to take you back to the beginning, to the days when my life felt full, warm, and noisy in the best way. Those were the years when my son Amir still lived under my roof, when he would sit at the kitchen table every morning with a cup of tea, pretending not to be in a hurry even though he always was. When our small home felt alive with the sound of his footsteps, his laughter, and his dreams that were far too big for our tiny living space. Back then, I used to wake up before the sun, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. There is a certain peace in those early moments when the world is still quiet, the air is cool, and everything feels possible. I would stand by the window watching the first light spill over the rooftops, and I would think of all the little blessings in my life. My son was one of them, and later my granddaughter became the biggest blessing of all. Amir was always a gentle boy, sensitive in ways he tried to hide, responsible in ways he never admitted, and kind in ways that made me proud every single day. He wasn't perfect, of course, no one is, but he had a soft heart. Sometimes too soft for this world. He would say, "Ami, one day I'll give you everything you deserve." And I would always tell him, "I already have everything I need, I have you." When he met his wife Zara, I could see how much he loved her. The kind of love that makes you nervous, hopeful, and foolish at the same time. She was polite in the beginning, soft-spoken, always smiling. I welcomed her into our home with all the warmth I had. I wanted her to feel that she wasn't gaining just a husband, she was gaining a family. For a while, everything was peaceful. We lived in a rhythm that felt natural, shared meals, shared laughter, shared burdens. And when Zara got pregnant, our joy doubled. I remember the day I found out. Amir came rushing into the kitchen, breathless and glowing with excitement. "Ami," he said, holding my hands, "you're going to be a grandmother." My heart felt like it expanded right inside my chest. I had waited for that moment for so long. I imagined holding that tiny child, hearing the word Nani for the first time, feeling her little fingers wrap around mine. I imagined teaching her stories, songs, little jokes only grandmothers know how to tell. When she was born, everything changed, not in a sudden, dramatic way, but in a slow, quiet way, the kind you don't notice until it's too late. Her name was Noor, a name that means light. And that's exactly what she was, a little beam of light in my aging world. The first time I held her, she was wrapped in a soft pink blanket. Her eyes were closed, her cheeks round and warm, her tiny hands curled into fists. I remember touching her forehead gently and whispering, "Welcome to the world, my little Noor." She didn't open her eyes, but she smiled in her sleep, and just like that, my heart became hers. For the first few months, everything felt perfect. Zara would hand her to me without hesitation. Amir would take pictures of the two of us, laughing and teasing me about how I hardly put her down. I would spend long afternoons rocking her, humming to her, memorizing every little sound she made, but slowly, almost like a shadow creeping in from the corner of a room, things began to change. Zara became distant, quieter. She started keeping Noor to herself more often. Small things that never mattered before suddenly became problems: a misplaced blanket, a suggestion she didn't like, a comment taken the wrong way. At first I dismissed it as exhaustion. New mothers go through so much. I understood that. I tried to give her space, I tried to help more. But the distance only grew. There were moments when I caught her staring at me with a kind of discomfort I didn't understand, as if I was taking up too much space, as if my presence was something she needed to tolerate. I remember one evening when Noor was about 6 months old. She had been crying for a long time, and nothing Zara did seemed to calm her down. I gently asked, "May I hold her for a moment?" Zara hesitated, a hesitation I was not used to, but Amir encouraged her softly. "Let Ammi help, she knows babies." She handed Noor to me, though her expression tightened. The moment Noor was in my arms, she stopped crying, just like that. She pressed her cheek against my shoulder and relaxed. I smiled with relief, but when I looked up at Zara, she wasn't smiling. Her eyes held something else, something I wished I had not seen. A seed of imbalance was planted that day. Small tensions began to grow. Little disagreements, misunderstandings that turned into quiet resentments. And though Amir tried his best to keep the peace, the distance between me and Zara grew wider with each passing week. Still, I never imagined that the same distance would one day take my granddaughter away from me entirely. One afternoon, when Noor was just over a year old, something small turned into something enormous. I had given Noor a tiny piece of bread, something she had eaten many times before, but Zara reacted sharply, saying she didn't want her eating that. The room fell silent. Her voice echoed louder than the words themselves. I apologized gently, but that moment created a crack that kept spreading through our home. Weeks passed, and I found myself spending less time with Noor. I tried to convince myself that it was normal, that Zara was simply adjusting as a new mother. But deep inside, I knew something was slipping away. I didn't know then that a day was coming when everything would break. The day Zara would make a decision that would change all our lives, a decision that would take Noor far away from me, a decision that would silence my home for the next 20 years. But before that day came, there were still moments of happiness, moments I hold on to even now, like the afternoons when Noor would crawl to me with bright, curious eyes, or the mornings when she would babble in soft baby sounds, reaching out her tiny hands for me, or the nights when I would rock her to sleep because she refused to sleep without hearing my voice. Those memories are all I carried with me for 2 decades. I didn't know then that these small, ordinary moments would one day become the treasures that kept me alive when everything else was taken away. But the truth is, even the happiest memories cannot protect you from what is meant to come. And what came next was something I never imagined, even in my worst fears. The shift in our home did not happen overnight. It came slowly, like rain that begins with a few gentle drops before turning into a storm. At first I kept telling myself it was normal. New families go through changes, new mothers get sensitive, new routines take time. I tried to stay patient, I tried to give space, I tried to be understanding, but no matter how much I tried, the air between us kept tightening. Some days Zara would avoid sitting in the same room with me. Other days she would answer me with short, clipped words, as if each sentence cost her something. Amir noticed, of course. He would glance between us, confused and helpless, trying to bridge the distance. One evening, when Noor was around 18 months old, Amir sat beside me on the edge of my bed. He looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from emotional strain rather than physical work. "Ami," he whispered, "I don't know what's happening anymore." I brushed his hair gently the way I used to when he was a boy. "What do you mean?" He sighed deeply. "Zara feels like you don't think she is a good mother." The words struck me like a blow. "Why would she think that? I have never—" "I know," he said quickly. "I know you haven't said anything, but she feels pressured. She thinks Noor listens to you more. She thinks Noor prefers you." I sat still, absorbing the heaviness of that sentence. It wasn't Noor's fault, and it wasn't mine either. Love is not a competition, especially the love of a child. "I will try harder," I said softly. "I don't want her to feel that way." He smiled gratefully, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. But even after that conversation, things didn't improve. If anything, they grew worse. One morning, I heard Zara crying in their room. Not loud crying, the quiet, muffled kind that breaks your heart. I knocked gently on the half-closed door. "Zara Beta, are you all right?" She wiped her face quickly, pretending to be busy folding clothes. "I'm fine," she said in a tone that was anything but fine. I stepped inside cautiously. "You can talk to me if something is upsetting you." She paused, her hands stilling on the clothes. Then she looked at me with eyes that carried so many unspoken fears. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I feel like I don't belong in this house." Her words sank into me like stones. "You do belong," I said immediately. "You are my daughter-in-law. You are the mother of my granddaughter. This home is yours too." But her expression didn't soften. Instead, she asked a question I wasn't prepared for. "Do you think Noor loves you more than she loves me?" I shook my head firmly. "No, Beta. She loves us both. She is a child. Her heart is big enough for everyone." She looked away as if she didn't believe me, as if she had already made up her mind. That was when I realized something painful. This wasn't about anything I had done. This was about how she felt inside, insecure, overwhelmed, afraid of losing her place in her own home. And no matter how gentle I tried to be, her fear kept winning. Then came the small moments, the ones that seem unimportant at the time but later become the pieces of a puzzle you wish you had solved sooner. Sometimes she would take Noor from my arms abruptly, without saying anything. Sometimes she would feed her without letting me help. Sometimes she would close the bedroom door when Noor cried, shutting me out. One evening, I walked into the living room and found Zara sitting on the floor with Noor, trying to teach her how to stack small wooden blocks. Noor kept crawling toward me, giggling, trying to show me the block she was holding. Zara forced a smile, but I could see the strain behind it. "Come here, Noor," she said softly, trying to pull her back. But Noor kept reaching her arms toward me. I bent down and picked her up gently, unable to resist her sweet, innocent excitement. Zara's face fell. "I wish she listened to me like that," she murmured under her breath. I wanted to tell her that Noor was just being a child, that her actions had nothing to do with preference, that babies often attach deeply to grandparents, but the words stayed stuck in my throat. Nothing I said would have changed how she felt. She got up quietly and walked to the kitchen without looking back. That was the day I started to sense something deeper, a fear within her that I couldn't reach, no matter how much I wanted to. As months passed, Zara grew more withdrawn. She didn't fight with me, she didn't speak harshly. Instead, she became distant in a way that hurt far more than anger ever could. Then came the moment that changed everything. A small incident, something that should have been solved in minutes, but instead, it opened a door to a misunderstanding that would eventually tear our family apart. It happened on a warm afternoon. Noor had a mild fever, nothing serious, just a small temperature from teething. Amir was at work and Zara had stepped out to run an errand for half an hour. I sat with Noor in my lap, gently wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. She whimpered softly, looking uncomfortable, so I hummed a tune to soothe her. When Zara returned, she saw the cloth in my hand, and panic immediately crossed her face. "What are you doing?" she asked sharply. "She has a slight fever," I explained. "I am just cooling her down. She will be fine." Zara rushed over, taking Noor from my arms. "Why didn't you call me? Why did you do something without telling me?" Her voice was trembling, not with anger but with fear. "Beta, it is not serious," I said. "Babies get small fevers. That's not the point," she snapped. I stepped back, surprised by the intensity of her reaction. "I am her mother," she said in a shaking voice. "You can't make decisions without me." I swallowed my words and simply nodded. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to make things worse. But something inside me sank. A deep, heavy sadness. Because in her eyes, I wasn't helping. I was interfering. That day marked a shift so subtle yet so powerful that I didn't realize I was losing my place in my granddaughter's life one small moment at a time. A week later, Amir told me something that broke my heart. "Zara wants us to move out," he said softly. I felt the world tilt beneath me. "Move out? But why?" He hesitated. Then he whispered the words I feared. "She thinks the house will be more peaceful. She thinks the distance will help." Help what? Fix what? Save what? I didn't ask. I already knew. I looked at my son's face, torn between his mother and his wife, and in that moment, I made the decision that only a mother could make. "It is all right," I said quietly. "You should do whatever keeps your marriage safe. I will be fine." But inside, I was not fine. Not even a little. The day they left, Noor reached for me as Amir carried her out the door. Her small hands stretched toward me, her tiny voice crying out as if she sensed something she couldn't understand. Zara gently turned her away, and just like that, my home fell silent. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that wraps around your heart and squeezes until breathing feels like effort. But even that wasn't the end. There was still a bigger storm ahead, a storm I never saw coming, a storm that would take my granddaughter even farther away, not just from my home but from my life. And once she was gone, I would not see her again for 20 years. The weeks after they moved out were some of the quietest of my life. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that settles over you like dust, coating every corner of your home, reminding you that something important is missing. I would wake up in the morning expecting to hear little footsteps, expecting to hear Noor's soft laughter echo from the living room. I would go to the kitchen and look at the chair where she used to sit, kicking her tiny legs while I mashed fruit for her. But the chair stayed empty, and the house stayed still. At first they would visit me on weekends. Amir would bring Noor for a few hours, and I would give her all my love in those short moments, holding her close, kissing her small hands, memorizing her expressions as if I knew time was running out. But Zara stopped coming with them, and slowly, even the visits started to become less frequent. One weekend, Amir came alone. No Noor, no diaper bag, no little shoes pattering against the floor. I opened the door expecting to see her bright face, but it was just my son standing with a strange heaviness in his posture. "Where is Noor?" I asked immediately. He looked down. "Zara took her to visit her parents this week." I nodded quietly, though my heart felt a sudden sharp ache. "That is all right," I whispered. "Next weekend, then." He opened his mouth to speak again, then stopped, as if swallowing words he wasn't ready to say. A month passed, and I saw Noor only twice. Something was wrong, painfully, obviously wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. I told myself to stay patient, not to pressure anyone, not to make Amir choose between me and Zara. I kept hoping things would settle, but they didn't. They only grew worse. The turning point, the moment everything broke, came on a bright, deceptively calm afternoon. One of those days where the sun shines warmly, the breeze is gentle, and the world looks kinder than it actually is. Amir called me in the morning. "Ami, can I come over? I need to talk to you." His voice carried a weight that made my heart tighten. "Of course," I said softly. "Come." He arrived within the hour, but he wasn't alone. Zara came with him. She stood behind him, holding Noor in her arms. Noor looked at me with a sudden excitement, reaching out her tiny hand, her eyes lighting up. But Zara didn't let her come to me. I stepped aside to let them in, feeling the air shift the moment they entered. Amir sat down slowly. Zara didn't sit. She stood by the door, holding Noor tightly against her chest as if she was protecting her from something. Or someone. "Amir," I said gently, "what is it? You look troubled." He rubbed his forehead, unable to meet my eyes. "Ami," he whispered, "we are moving." I blinked. "Moving? But you just moved a few months ago." He shook his head. "No, not to another part of the city." He paused, looking at Zara, then back at me. "We are moving abroad." The room tilted, my breath caught in my chest. Abroad? When? Why? Zara's voice finally joined the conversation, soft, controlled, but firm. My parents live there. They can help us. They have better opportunities, better schools for Noor, better everything. But you didn't discuss this with me, I said quietly, stunned. Amir looked broken. I wanted to tell you earlier, but everything has been so hard lately. Zara feels... Don't speak for me, she said sharply. He closed his mouth. She looked at me then, and in her eyes I saw a decision that had been made long before this conversation. We need a fresh start, she said. A place where there is no constant conflict, no misunderstandings, no competition. The word stabbed through me, competition, as if my love for Noor was something harmful, as if my presence was a threat. I never competed with you, I whispered, my voice trembling. She looked away, not responding. How long? I asked quietly. How long until you leave? Amir's voice cracked as he answered, next week. My legs felt weak. I held onto the edge of the table to steady myself. So soon? I got the job offer last month, he said slowly. The visa came faster than expected. I stared at him, my son, the boy I had raised with every ounce of love I had, and I felt a distance between us that I never imagined could exist. You were going to leave, I whispered, and I was not even going to know until today. He closed his eyes, shame filling his face. I'm sorry, Ami, he said. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you would be angry. I felt something inside me break, not from anger but from a kind of sorrow too deep to describe. Anger fades, disappointment fades, but heartbreak, that stays. You could have trusted me, I whispered. I am your mother. He had no answer. Noor reached out for me again, her little hands opening and closing, making soft baby sounds. She wanted to come to me. She didn't understand any of this. She only knew she loved me. I stepped forward, wanting to hold her one last time, but Zara shifted back slightly, tightening her hold. No, she said softly but firmly. Not now. I froze. Why not? I whispered. Because, her voice trembled for the first time, because she gets too attached to you, and it makes everything harder. Everything inside me shattered. I looked at Amir, silently begging him to speak, to say something, anything, but he just sat there, torn apart, unable to move. When will you come back? I finally asked. Amir hesitated. Zara didn't. We don't know, she said. It could be years. Years, the word echoed like thunder in my ears. Will you send pictures? I asked softly. Zara looked away. We will see. I swallowed the pain rising in my throat. Will you video call? I tried again. We will see, she repeated. I understood then, this wasn't just a move, this was a separation, a quiet, polite, painful cutting of ties. Amir stood and walked toward me. He hugged me tightly, whispering, Please forgive me. I hugged him back, my tears falling silently onto his shoulder. You are my son, I whispered. I will always forgive you. But when he pulled away, Noor reached out again, crying to be held by me, and Zara did something that still haunts me to this day. She turned and walked out with the baby, just walked out, without letting me hold her, without letting me kiss her, without giving me one last moment with the child who had been the light of my life. Amir followed quietly, looking back at me with eyes full of pain. When the door closed behind them, the sound echoed through the entire house, a sound that stayed with me for years. That was the moment I lost my granddaughter, not because I didn't love her, not because I did something wrong, but because life can be cruel in ways that leave no scars on the body, only on the heart. A week later, they left the country. I didn't go to the airport. I couldn't. I stayed home, sitting in the corner of my living room, staring at the door they had walked out of. I waited for updates, for photos, for calls, for anything, but nothing came. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, months turned into years, and eventually, I stopped expecting the phone to ring. For 20 years, I lived with the ache of that silence. Yet somewhere deep inside my heart, even as the years passed and the seasons changed, a small, fragile hope stayed alive. The hope that one day Noor might look for me. I didn't know when. I didn't know how. I didn't know if it would ever happen. But then one ordinary evening, that old hope became reality, with one message, one sentence, one question that took me back to the life I had lost. Hello, I think you might be my grandmother. Is your name Shahnaz? And just like that, the story that I thought had ended found its way back to me. When I saw Noor's message after 20 long years, something inside me shifted. It was as if a door I believed was locked forever suddenly opened, letting light spill into a part of my heart that had been dark for too long. For a long moment I simply stared at the message on my phone. My fingers trembled, my breath felt shallow. I was afraid to reply, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know if she truly meant to find me. What if it was a mistake? What if she was only curious, not ready to know me? What if this single message was all she wanted, just an answer, not a relationship? I wiped my eyes slowly and whispered to myself, "Be calm, take your time." But even telling myself that felt impossible. My heart was beating so loudly that it felt like the sound filled the room. For 20 years I had lived with silence, and now a single sentence had awakened everything I had buried. Finally, I typed my reply. "Yes, Beta, my name is Shahnaz. Who are you?" The answer came within seconds. "I'm Noor. I think I'm your granddaughter." I had to sit down. I placed the phone on my lap and covered my face with my hands. The tears came softly, not like a storm, but like a river that had been waiting too long to flow. I whispered her name aloud. "Noor, my Noor." The child I once held, the child whose laughter filled my home, the child I lost in the doorway when Zara walked out with her. She was not a child anymore. She was a grown woman now, old enough to look for me on her own. I picked up the phone again and typed slowly, carefully, afraid of saying too much. "Yes, Noor, I am your grandmother. I have missed you every day." 3 dots appeared on the screen, typing. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. "Why did you never contact me?" she wrote. The question I dreaded the most, the misunderstanding I had feared for years, the story she must have grown up hearing, that I had let her go, that I had forgotten her, that I didn't fight for her. I closed my eyes for a moment. I felt the weight of those 20 years press down on me, heavy and unforgiving. Then I typed back, "I tried, Beta, but I was not allowed. I was told not to call, not to visit. Your parents moved away without telling me where. I tried, but I could not find you." There was a long pause, much longer than before. I wondered what she was thinking. I wondered what she had been told. I wondered if she had been raised with a version of me that wasn't true. Then finally, "Nanny, I didn't know. Nobody told me any of this." Nanny. She called me Nanny. The single word broke me open. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop the sob that came out of me. I had imagined this moment so many times, in dreams and prayers and silent nights when I sat awake with memories instead of sleep. But hearing it, even on a screen, felt like being lifted out of years of loneliness. I gathered myself and typed again. "It's all right, Beta. You don't have to explain anything." She replied almost immediately, "No, I want to. I always felt something was missing, especially when I was little. I used to ask about you, but the answers were never clear." My heart tightened. My Noor, asking about me while I sat miles away, wondering if she even remembered my face. "May I ask you something?" she wrote. "Yes, Beta, anything. Can we talk on a call?" I froze. A call? Her voice, after 20 years? My fingers shook so much I had to steady them on the table. "Yes," I typed. "Call me whenever you want." The phone rang almost instantly. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so loudly that I could barely hear the ringtone. I pressed accept. There was silence for a moment, a silence filled with 20 years of separation. Then a soft voice said, "Assalamu alaikum, Nani." I closed my eyes and the tears fell before I could stop them. "Walaikum assalam, Mary John," I whispered. "My Noor, is it really you?" She laughed softly and the sound felt familiar, achingly familiar, a mixture of her childhood voice and something new, grown, mature. "Yes," she said, "it's me. I finally found you." I held the phone to my ear with both hands as if trying to hold her presence closer. "How?" I asked gently. "How did you find me?" She told me everything, how she had always felt something was missing, a piece of her identity she couldn't explain, how she had once seen an old photo of me tucked inside her father's things, how she had secretly searched for clues online, how she had tried different names, different spellings, different combinations, until finally, she found someone who recognized my name, and that was how she found my social profile, the old one I barely used. She said she stared at my picture for almost an hour before messaging me. She said something inside her told her, "This is her, this is my grandmother." I listened to her speak, each word like a healing touch, but then her voice changed. "Nani, may I ask you something difficult?" "Yes, Beta, you can ask me anything." "Did you ever stop loving me?" The question pierced me deeper than any wound I had ever carried. No, I whispered. Never. I loved you every moment of every day, even when I thought I'd never see you again. Even when people told me to forget, I never forgot, not for a single breath. There was a soft sob on the other end of the call. I wish I had known, she said. I wish someone had told me. Life separates people sometimes, I whispered, but love brings them back. She sniffled, trying to compose herself. I want to meet you, she said suddenly, not someday, not later. I want to meet you soon. My breath caught. Are you sure, Beta? Yes, she said firmly. I need to. I feel like my life started making sense the moment I found you. I held the phone against my heart for a moment, as if her words were something fragile and precious. When will you come? I asked softly. There was hesitation. Then she said something that made me sit up straight. I'm actually already in the city. What? Yes, I came last week for a project. I didn't know you lived here, not until yesterday. Can I come see you? Yes, I whispered. Come now. Come right now, Beta. I am here. She laughed softly again, a laugh filled with relief and nervousness. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Nani. Come, I whispered. I'll be waiting. I hung up the call slowly, my hands trembling, my breaths uneven. She was coming, my Noor after 20 years, the little girl I had lost, a grown woman she had become. Both were coming back to me. I looked around my home, the quiet, lonely place it had been for so long, and for the first time in years, it felt alive again. I didn't rush. I didn't worry about how I looked. I simply sat near the window where I used to stand waiting for her as a baby, and whispered prayers of gratitude. Every second felt like an hour. Every breeze felt like a messenger carrying her closer to me, and when the doorbell finally rang, I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and stood up slowly. The moment I had imagined for 20 years had finally arrived. When the doorbell rang, it felt like the entire world grew still. I stood there for a moment, my hand hovering above the doorknob, trying to steady the storm of emotions inside me. My heart was beating so loudly I wondered if she could hear it from outside. Finally, I opened the door. There she was, my Noor. Not the tiny girl I once held in my arms, not the toddler who crawled towards me with bright eyes, but a young woman, tall, graceful, with a gentle sadness lingering in her expression, the kind of sadness carried by someone who has searched for answers for a long time. For a few seconds we just stared at each other. No words, just recognition. Her eyes were the same soft, warm eyes she had as a child, the eyes that always made my heart melt. Nani? She whispered. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. She stepped forward slowly as if worried she might break the moment by moving too quickly. But the distance between us was small, and when she reached me, she wrapped her arms around me. I felt her warmth, her heartbeat, her breath trembling against my shoulder, and I held her, really held her, for the first time in 20 years. I closed my eyes as tears slipped down my cheeks. It felt like my heart had finally found a missing piece of itself. Like time folded inwards, bringing the past and the present together in one healing embrace. I missed you, she whispered, her voice cracking. I missed you too, Mary John, I whispered back. More than you will ever know. We stood there for a long time, not wanting to let go. Her grip only tightened as if she was afraid I might disappear again, but I wasn't going anywhere, not this time. Eventually, she pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She smiled, a soft, shaky smile, and I saw traces of the little Noor I once knew. Can I come in? She asked gently. This will always be your home, I said. She stepped inside slowly, looking around the house as if trying to memorize every detail. Her gaze lingered on the old sofa, the framed photos, the curtains that had faded over the years. It feels familiar, she murmured. You lived here, I said, for the first years of your life. She swallowed hard. Nani, why did nobody tell me that? I breathed in slowly, gathering the courage to answer. Sometimes adults make decisions out of fear, I said softly. Sometimes they try to protect themselves, and in doing so, they hurt others. They didn't know how to explain things to you. They didn't know how to face their own choices. She nodded slowly, absorbing every word. I always felt something missing, she admitted. I always felt like a part of me didn't belong anywhere. You belong here, I whispered. With me, you always have. She sat beside me on the sofa and we talked for hours. She told me about her life, her studies, her dreams, her struggles, her childhood memories that were blurry and incomplete. I listened to every word, memorizing her voice, the way she spoke, the way she laughed. At one point, she took my hand and held it tightly. Nani, "I want you in my life," she said. "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't," I whispered. "As long as I am alive, you will never lose me again." Her eyes softened. "Can I visit you again, tomorrow and the day after?" I smiled, a genuine full smile I hadn't felt in years. "You can come every day if you want, Beta." She leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to as a toddler, and for a long moment we simply sat in silence, not the painful silence of the past, but the peaceful silence of people who have found each other again. As the evening light faded into soft shadows, she finally stood up to leave. She hugged me again at the door, even tighter than before. "I love you, Nani," she whispered. "I love you too, Noor," I said, my voice steady, warm, always. She stepped outside, gave me one last smile, and walked toward her car. Before getting in, she turned back and waved, a small gesture but one that filled my heart with a joy I had forgotten existed. When she drove away, I didn't feel the old emptiness return. Instead, I felt full, hopeful, alive. Because after 20 years of silence, of distance, of unanswered prayers, my Noor had come back, and sometimes, even after all the heartbreak, all the waiting, all the unanswered questions, life still finds a way to give you back what you thought you had lost forever. It may come late, it may come quietly, but it comes. And when it does, you realize something important. Love never truly disappears. It waits, it survives, it finds its way home, just like my Noor found me. The end.